Right now, it is time to bring in Brian Ross. It's time for Real News. Brian joins us on a Thursday morning, every Thursday morning, and we have a plethora, a word that Dr. Rudd taught me many years ago at Housatonic Valley Regional High School, a plethora of stories. Good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Marshall. Where do we start?
Well, I'm going to start with President Biden. There's no excuse. I sit here and you can't compare fruits to nuts and stuff with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but yet you can, because that's the way society is. But how in God's name do these political parties keep stepping on their toes like this?
I'll tell you, and whatever happened there, and it's not the same. Biden found it, turned it over. What they didn't do, though, was make it known to the public, right. And it could have been known before the election, which would have had an impact. And I think that is a major failing there. I'm not sure who's responsible for that, but sounds like the White House.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, and in today's social media, where I hate to say more and more people get their news from their friends on Facebook. It's a perfect ploy to change the narrative and to misdirect actually what has happened. But still, there's no doubt about it. Just a major kerfuffle for President Biden and the White House and for the Democratic Party.
Yeah, and I think more than a kerfuffle, frankly, and I think it imperils the Justice Department investigation of Donald Trump. How do they actually go ahead and prosecute Trump on this issue of these documents? The difference here, of course, is that Trump tried to hide them after being told to turn them over, whereas the Biden lawyers seem to have done it right away. They just didn't make it public, which I think is a flaw there, and that was for political gain, no doubt, because the week before the election, if we'd known that, we might have thought differently. Who knows? But we'll never know what that would have meant. But the fact is, it should have been. They should have been more transparent and right away.
Well, you mentioned the political implications of it, and locally now. When I say locally, in our area, the Republican Party on Long Island is going to ban the newly elected congressman, and they want him to resign. The National Republican Party doesn't want him to resign. Why? Because it's politics. It's a district that they could lose if there was a special election, and it's close enough now. It would trim their majority to 4. So once again, a political party is choosing, the national political party is choosing political expedience over the right thing to do, which the local Republican Party wants to do in New York.
Well, it's politics, and we shouldn't be surprised at it. We just think let's. It's a good time to remind us that on both sides of the aisle, the politicians are politicians.
Yeah, it's amazingly true. So we'll have to see how both those political stories actually move out. Also, I guess what we can talk about is what happened yesterday. I mean, a release was sent out saying that it did not look like it was a terrorist attack, but obviously now being released today, a corrupted file in both the main system and the backup system for the FFA brought air transportation to a standstill, and it will take actually probably weeks to catch up.
A corrupted file, and I don't know enough about the internet and computers to know exactly what that means, but I'm suspicious, I have to say.
Well, when you hear corrupted file, and as someone who this station operates on computers, a corrupted file can show up in one place once. Can it show up in 2 places, a regular system and a backup system, where they actually cleaned the file out once and then it came back again? That is not just a corrupted file. That is someone, and I'm not saying it's another country, that is someone who wanted to disable the system. There's just no doubt about it.
With the same time we have the hack of the British Postal Service system. You wonder, because we do know, in the major story this morning in the New York Times, Russia has a great deal of capability when it comes to the cyber wars. We haven't seen much of it. They've been at it in Ukraine, and without great success. Frankly, it's a surprise to many of the people I talk to who know about national security that they weren't able, through electronic means, to shut down the power plants, and they've had to use missiles and artillery attacks. Even so, there's a lot that Russia could do, they believe, in a cyber attack way against the NATO allies in the U.S. that they haven't done, and they wonder if that's coming.
And speaking about Russia and the Ukraine, once again, they've appointed someone else now to run the special operation in Ukraine. Right. In Ukraine, and yet, I think over the past 3 weeks, three major players in Russian politics turned up dead. It's just a wild scene. What's going on in the Kremlin?
I don't know if it's a job you would want, frankly.
Yeah.
To be honest, they keep replacing generals, and whoever is in charge is going to take the fall for Putin, and he's savvy about it that way. It is interesting to note, as I was reading some depth on this, that Putin was never really in the military. He's not a general. He doesn't know strategy. He may think he does, but he's been making decisions from the Kremlin, which have clearly not always been terrific, and blaming others is what his greatest skill is, it seems. But that's, to me, a sign that no good will come of this for the general who's taking over, and the advances of this private army, the mercenaries called the Wagner or Wagner group, named after the composer. They are really brutal, and as if Russia wasn't brutal enough, these guys are even worse. They've been used in Syria and across Africa, and they've had some limited success, it seems. And so, if that's the template for success, look out.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Now, I want to move into what I thought was going to happen with the Republican Party, and it's just a trickle now. But sooner or later, when more and more legislation comes up, a pretty conservative representative, Tony Gonzalez of Texas, he voted against the GOP House rules, the only one to do it. And his quote to Jake Tapper yesterday was, "I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone." This is going to be a come to Jesus moment for true conservatives, and how they're going to see and try to mend the future of the Republican Party.
Indeed, it is. If there are, the remaining true conservatives, so many of the Republicans voted not to certify the election and continue to claim the election was stolen 2 years ago. It will be very interesting to see if they break ranks. We saw from the Saturday Night Live skit called the United States House of Representatives last weekend how not in control Kevin McCarthy has been of his troops. Let's see if he can find some way to get them in control. It seems unlikely, and that's when you're going to have this kind of these members of the party who resisted voting for McCarthy till the very end, they see their role as much different. And in some ways, they have advocated what people on the left have too, that we need more time to study these bills. We can't be voting on $1 trillion bill given 6 hours notice. Nobody knows what's in it. Some of that rings true to me.
Yep, absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's always been a problem. But what the problem is with the rules that they've done is, once again, one member of the House, one member, can call for the resignation and slow down the process of the Speaker of the House. One person. That's a disaster waiting to happen.
That's what he had to agree to get the votes. So he's got the votes now. Let's see if he can handle it. John Boehner and Paul Ryan, they had enough. It was not working, and it may not work. And if anything, I think it'll give the country a view of what would happen if Republicans had complete control of both houses. I think that they've set themselves up for a real drubbing, I think, in 2 years.
And moving on to COVID very quickly, vaccine advisors to the federal government now report that they were disappointed and angry that government scientists and the pharmaceutical company Moderna did not present a set of infection data on the company's COVID-19 booster during meetings last year. And when a story like this comes out, it takes the general public and erodes the confidence in the vaccine even more.
Yes, it does. No doubt about it. And those are the facts, though. Those are the facts. So a lot for us to consider as we think about all the moves that were made, and we cheered on certain aspects of what was going on with the vaccines, the anti-vaccines. Now that we learned that there are more questions about it than we knew, it undercuts the credibility substantially.
And I am very lucky. I have a local doctor that I got the two shots, and then I've developed respiratory problems and blood problems, and he told me, I have to advise you against getting updates here. He said because it's just too strange that this all developed. We never had anything like this right after. Within 2 months or 3 months.
Is that right? That's really something.
Yeah, and to this day, I was at a specialist last week, and she raised the point that we're looking for something here that we might not be able to find because it might have affected the way results are reported from your COVID shots. So it's no longer a kooky theory to question the effectiveness and the ramifications of COVID-19 shots. I mean, it's still vaccines are great, and it's a good thing, but you don't have to feel like you're an outlier if you have questions about it.
I think that's very true, and I'm sorry for you. That's just, but maybe you are one of those people for whom there are some negative consequences.
It's one of those things, but it's one of those things that help divide this country. And once again, it goes along with what President Biden and those papers, and now this, it erodes people's confidence in the government, and that's one thing we don't need right now.
No, and again, it goes to there's been very good reporting that's made this come to light, and that's an important thing. The truth will come out. You can't hide it forever. Whether it's classified documents found in the old Biden vice presidential office, off-site office, or whatever it is, people who think they can try to hide things and get away with it, they always end up wrong.
Yeah. Always great to speak to you, Brian, and we'll speak to you next week.
Okay, I can't wait. It'll be important. A lot going on. Any snow coming, Marshall?
No, not for the foreseeable future.
What a winter!
Well, gosh. There's the old meteorological thing. For every action, there's a reaction, and sooner or later, there'll be a reaction, and we'll get snow. All right, Brian, take care.
We'll talk to you soon. Feel better. Great.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Brian Ross and Real News this morning here on The Breakfast Club on Robin Hood Radio.